welcome to my channel. Today I have for you another SCT Sampler Kit unboxing and project. If you're new to my channel, thank you so much for subscribing. I appreciate you being here. Let me tell you about these kits. These are little samples of supplies that are curated by the Scrapbook and Cards Today magazine, and they are out of Canada, and these kits are really affordable. I sign up for a year at a time, but I only have to pay quarterly, and that brings it to $13 a month, including shipping coming out of Canada. So they are a great value and a wonderful little sampling of supplies from various manufacturers. So when you open up your kit, everything just comes tucked into the Ziploc baggie, and this card is always included that lists the supply items, and it has a theme word on the other side. Now, usually there is a theme word embellishment that matches. However, manufacturing problems in the current world events made it not happen this month. So keep that in mind for future kits. And speaking of future kits, when you sign up for these kits, you can't get this current one. You will sign up and get a future kit. So keep that in mind as well. Now, getting to these products, I already set aside there on the left that stencil, and these kits usually include one reusable item, like a stamp or a stencil, something like that. So that was great. And then the second piece I set back down there were some watercolor paper from Close to My Heart. And so that is got an embossed texture on it that when you watercolor, it will resist the watercolor and leave behind that white impression that shows up against your color. Now moving on, the rest of the kit usually contains two separate manufacturer collections, and what I'm showing you here is a Cartabella collection. Now Cartabella, if you're not familiar with them, is really unique in their papers because their papers have a wonderful texture to them. And it's almost like watercolor paper in a way. It's not quite as thick, but that's the texture it has. And then here are partial embellishment packs that come with it. And now these brads are really awesome because, as you'll see in a moment, there is no brad piece. They're self-adhesive brads, and they are actually much lovelier in person than they are showing up online, because online it just looks like a little graphic image and you can't quite tell the detail of them. So those are great brads. Now I've moved on to the second collection, which is a Pebbles collection. And I always have links for all of these supplies in the show notes. So what went by already on camera was a cut apart sheet and a partial package of thicker word embellishments and a partial package of puffy heart embellishments. And those are all kind of gold foiled. And I am showing you the pattern papers here. Now, when you get these kits, the pattern papers are 6x6 sheets, and they are actually cut down from a larger 12x12 sheet. Now, this collection was actually on my wish list already, so that was kind of fun to get it in the mail. And part of the reason why I like this collection is that it has a very neutral feel to it. Yes, there are some florals and butterflies, but in terms of colors and patterns, you can also go masculine with it, which is what I did for the project. So don't miss my project after I showcase these products. So here are the partial packages of embellishment. Now I believe these items come from 3 separate embellishment packs, and I do have links for all of those in the show notes. And I'm not sure which piece comes from which pack, but the best I could figure out was that there's 3 separate packs. So that is our sample of supplies for this month, and I love these kits because they give us plenty of fun little goodies to play with. All right, let's move on to the project. And I actually have 2 parts to the project today. So I'm going to make a slimline card, which has kind of been all the rage this year. And I used to do these a lot, but I haven't done it in a while. So this is kind of fun to come back to it. So how I approach my slimline cards is I take my 8.5 by 11 full sheet of paper. I will score it widthways at 3.5 inches, and then I will fold it and trim it down so that the total card measures 3.5 inches by 8.5 inches. And that fits in a standard US business size envelope, which is kind of nice because those envelopes are easy to find just about anywhere. Now that will leave you a little leftover piece of paper, and I'm going to use that piece of paper. I'm trimming it down by, it's 3 by 8, so that will give me a little bit of a border on that piece. And then I am pulling out papers and embellishments to go with this card. And like I said, I want to come up with a little bit of a masculine feel. And the reason I'm sending this card is because we have a family member who is terminally ill, and the card is going to the husband and wife, and the husband is ill, and I wanted the card to read masculine enough and yet feminine enough to work for both recipients. And so this collection is great for that. So here I am picking out some colors because that first layer, I'm going to use the stencil and I'm going to use my colors of ink pad to give some texture, again, to bring in more of that richer color that I wanted onto this project. So I slowed it down just a little bit here so that you can see I had to move the stencil a little bit in order to cover this full length of the card. But if you're careful and just line up previous inking with the pattern of the stencil, then you can get continuous pattern across your entire project, and it works out just fine. So there's another little bit of a close-up. I've got two different colors going on here, but with a heavier coat of ink and a lighter coat of ink, you can vary the shades even more than that. So there you could see me just a little bit being careful lining up everything again as I moved back with my second color. Now I did get a little bit of a gap there where the edge of that stencil is bold, but what I did is I just went back over and shifted my stencil, lined it back up, and covered up that gap, and that worked out just fine. Now I did give it an ink around the edge with my darkest color because, as you can see, that gives it a nice crisp pop against the background of the white. And then I take my 6x6 sheets and I just start trimming off strips of them that will sit to the left of my project. And this will give me plenty of space off to the right to do some embellishing. And I gave myself a little bit of border, and then I decided that paper could use just a little bit more separation between the busy patterns. So I did grab a piece of Cartabella that actually was green and gave it a little bit of separation. And then these little perforated tag pieces, when you tear them apart, they do have those edges there, and I just trimmed those off. Now here's a tip for you. When I'm working with some pre-made word embellishments, one thing I like to do is to stick some washi tape, and oops, I accidentally stuck it to my pattern paper, but I stick some washi tape down upon those words, and then I will peel back the backing to those words, and then all of my letters will stay exactly as they are displayed on that sheet, right in order, spaced correctly. And then I can take that washi tape, and because the washi is a little bit see-through, it's enough see-through that I can line up my letters onto my project and get it as straight as I would like it to be. And then if you just kind of press down the tops of those letters, don't push in between because that'll make your washi tape stick to your project, but just press on the letters themselves, and then you can peel the washi tape back and you've got everything lined up for you, and it's much easier than trying to get each letter going on its own. So I am just moving on with the project. I did pop up that sentiment strip just a little bit with some foam squares, and I added my second little sentiment strip. I wanted to add this floral bouquet because florals are always nice with thinking of you cards, especially during hard times. And these gold hearts were perfect because it sends the message of love in an elegant and thoughtful way, I think. So I'm trying to see how these other pieces might work on this project, and I decided to go with that other tear apart that's kind of a floral piece with some gold foil on it, and I kind of use it as a little arrow when I tear the pieces apart to point towards the main phrase there. And then with a couple more hearts to embellish, I'm going to call this card done. So here's a little bit of a close-up of it, and if you stick around with me, I have part 2 of this project. Now you can see I tucked that in my envelope, and even though there's little pieces hanging off the edge, it will still fit in there. Now this project, because of the thickness, might require extra postage, so just keep that in mind. Now here is part 2. That envelope that I had is a business envelope, and it's kind of ugly. It doesn't have the feel of kindness and compassion that I want this card to go with. So I am going to make my own envelope. I don't do this very often, but I do it occasionally when I really want a project to be special. In order to make my envelope, I'm going to use a We Are Memory Keepers punch board. Now this is a multitask punch board. They do have just an envelope punch board, and I will put links to in the show notes for both of those items. Now I had to go to my stash and pull out a separate piece of 12 by 12 paper because I needed a larger size than what was available in my SCT kit, because this little chart here tells you for a card of our size, which is a card of 3.5 by 8.5, I need to cut a square of paper that I think was like 9 1/8 inches by 9 1/8 inches. So that was definitely not going to happen with my SCT kit. So I just picked a piece of pattern paper that is a very subtle paper that will be easy to write my address on and send it off in the mail. So now the second part of this process is to line up the edge of your paper with the appropriate guideline, and then you're going to give it a punch with that punch, and then you're going to score on the appropriate line. Now this tool has 2 lines, so you need to score on the first one. The regular punch board just has 1 line. Now you'll notice that my paper is longer than the punch board, so how I continue doing that is I flip my paper over. That's very important, to flip it over to the other side and line it up with that same guide, and then continue scoring to the edge of your paper. Now that's the only time you'll have to line up your paper with that line on the guide, because once you've done that first step, you're going to take your score line and line it up with the groove on this side of this punch. And then you just repeat these steps. You punch and you score and you rotate and you punch and you score. Now I'm going to show you another way to accomplish this line. Because that end didn't score properly, I can just start folding it and then continue folding it. So that is another way to approach it if you don't want to try and get everything lined up on the other side. So then I finish my last side and the body of my envelope is done. So now all you have to do is fold up your envelope and tuck in those edges, and you can tape this together in any way you want. You can have the flap on the outside, you can have the big flap on the inside, whichever way you want. With this size of envelope, you will have a little bit of excess flap to deal with, and how I deal with it is I just tuck it down and fold it. And that's true on the inside and on the outside. So you could cut it off if you wanted to, but I just tuck and fold. So that is how I approach that. Now, if you're doing a standard card size envelope, this won't be an issue for you, and you also won't have to do that extra, worry about that extra scoring step. But for these larger envelopes, that does become an issue. And so now I just use a nice strong adhesive, and I'm going to burnish it down nice and well so that it will hold up going through the mail. And then my envelope is done, and I will give it a test run with my card just to make sure nothing's catching, especially since that card had a little bit of overhang on it. And I put it in, and everything is working fine, and it is ready to go. So I hope you enjoyed this unboxing, this card project, and a little bit of a tutorial on how to make your own envelopes. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. I do appreciate you being here. I'll see you next time. I really appreciate you watching. If you got something helpful out of this video, please do give it a like. That helps my channel. And if you want to catch my future videos, please subscribe.